A 19-year-old actor froze on camera during the 20th take and couldn't speak. The entire crew thought his career was over. What Clint Eastwood did next, without cameras rolling, taught Hollywood a lesson about mental health that nobody talks about. It was July 2008, on the set of Gran Torino in Detroit, Michigan. The temperature outside was pushing 95 degrees, but inside the small house where they were filming, it felt even hotter. Lights blazing, crew packed into tight spaces, the air thick with that particular tension that builds when a scene isn't working and everyone knows it. Clint Eastwood, at 78 years old, sat in his director's chair watching a young actor struggle through what should have been a simple scene. The actor's name was Vang. He was 19 years old, a Hmong-American kid from Minnesota who'd never acted before in his life. He'd been cast to play Tao Lor, a teenager who becomes an unlikely friend to Clint's character, Walt Kowalski, a bitter Korean War veteran who'd rather hate the world than join it. The scene they were shooting was critical. Tao is confessing to Walt about being forced into gang activity. It's a vulnerable moment, a turning point in their relationship. The dialogue isn't long, maybe 12 lines, but every word carries weight. Fear, shame, hope, desperation. All of it needs to be there in B's face, in his voice, in the way his hands won't stop shaking. Take one. B stumbled over the lines, looked at the wrong camera. Cut. Clint said quietly. Let's go again. You're doing fine. Just relax. Take two. Better, but B's voice was too quiet, uncertain. Cut. A little louder. Remember, you're scared, but you're also determined. He needs to hear you. Take three. B rushed the words, trying to get through them before he forgot. Cut. Take your time. The words will be there. By take 7, the crew was getting restless. By take 10, they were checking their watches. This was unusual for a Clint Eastwood set. Clint famously shot fast, often getting what he needed in 1 or 2 takes. He trusted actors to come prepared. He didn't believe in endless rehearsals or dozens of takes. If you weren't ready, you shouldn't be on set. But here they were. Take 11. Take 12. Take 13. B was sweating now, and not just from the heat. You could see it happening in real time. Confidence draining out of him like water through a sieve. His voice getting smaller. His body language closing in. The professional actors around him, Clint, Christopher Carley, the others, were all patient, supportive, doing everything they could to make it easier. But nothing was working. Take 15. B forgot a line completely, stood there frozen, mouth open, nothing coming out. Cut, Clint said. Take 5 minutes, everyone. Get some water. The crew dispersed gratefully. B stood alone in the middle of the room, head down, hands shaking. One of the production assistants brought him water. He took it but didn't drink. Just held it, staring at nothing. Clint walked over. You okay? B nodded, but his eyes said something different. You want to take a longer break? No, B said quickly. No, I can do this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm wasting everyone's time. I know the lines. I know them. I practiced all night. I don't know why I can't. Hey, Clint said gently. Breathe. Nobody's angry. Nobody's judging you. This is just a scene. We'll get it. But you don't usually do this many takes, B said, his voice cracking. Everyone knows that. You get it in 1 or 2 takes, and we move on. I'm the problem. I'm ruining your schedule. Kid. Clint interrupted. I've been making movies for 50 years. I've seen everything. This is nothing. We've got time. But B wasn't hearing him. You could see the panic building behind his eyes. That particular kind of terror that comes when you're young and inexperienced and suddenly realize you're in way over your head. When you can't do the thing everyone's counting on you to do. And every second that passes makes it worse. They went back to filming. Take 16. B got halfway through. Then his voice just stopped. Like a car engine cutting out. The words were there. You could see him trying. But nothing came out. Cut. You're fine. Let's go again. Take 17. He managed to finish, but his performance was wooden, mechanical. He was trying so hard to just get through it that all the emotion was gone. Cut. Better. But remember why you're saying these words. You're not reciting. You're confessing. Take 18. B broke down crying in the middle of the scene. Not acting crying. Real crying. The kind that comes from exhaustion and shame and overwhelming pressure. Cut, Clint said immediately. He stood up from his chair. The crew went silent. Take 19. They tried again. B pulled himself together, started the scene. Got 6 lines in. Then something happened. You could see it in his face, the moment when your brain just shuts down. When the anxiety gets so overwhelming that your body stops cooperating. His breathing became rapid, shallow. His hands started shaking uncontrollably. His eyes lost focus. I can't, B whispered. I can't breathe. I can't. Cut, Clint said, but B wasn't hearing him anymore. Take 20 started but never really began. B stood in his mark. The camera rolled. Clint called action, and B opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Absolutely nothing. He stood there for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Frozen. Silent. Barely breathing. And then he collapsed. Not dramatically, not like in a movie. Just, his knees gave out, and he sat down hard on the floor, head in his hands, hyperventilating. The entire crew stood frozen, unsure what to do. Some looked away, embarrassed for him. Others looked concerned. The first AD started to move forward, but Clint held up a hand. Everyone out, Clint said quietly. Not angry. Not loud. Just definitive. Clear the set. Everyone except essential crew out. Take 30 minutes. Go get lunch. There was a moment of confusion. Then people started moving. Actors to their trailers. Crew to craft services. Within 2 minutes, the house was empty except for Clint, be still sitting on the floor, and the cinematographer and script supervisor who stayed at Clint's gesture. Clint walked over to B and did something nobody expected. He sat down on the floor next to him. Not on a chair. Not standing over him. On the floor. Right there in the middle of the set. In his jeans and button-up shirt. Sitting cross-legged like they were kids at a campfire. You ever had a panic attack before? Clint asked. B shook his head, still struggling to breathe. I don't know what's happening. You're having a panic attack, Clint said matter-of-factly. I've had them. They're scary as hell, but they can't hurt you. What you're feeling right now, the can't breathe, the racing heart, the sense that something terrible is happening. It's your body's alarm system going off. But there's no fire. You're safe. You just need to convince your body of that. We looked at him, tears streaming down his face. You've had panic attacks. Sure. First one was in 1959, during Rawhide. Second season, I think. We were filming a scene, and suddenly I couldn't remember my lines. Couldn't remember my own name. Thought I was dying. They had to stop production. I was convinced my career was over. We stared at him. What did you do? Well, first I hid it from everyone because in 1959 you didn't talk about this stuff. Men especially didn't admit to fear or anxiety. You just pushed through it and pretended everything was fine. Which, I'll tell you right now, is the worst possible way to handle it. Clint stretched his legs out in front of him, casual as if they were sitting in a park. Took me years to figure out that the panic wasn't because I was weak. It was because I was putting pressure on myself that no human being should carry. I was so terrified of failing, so convinced that one mistake would end everything, that my body started treating every take like a life-or-death situation. That's exactly how I feel, B said, his breathing starting to slow slightly. Like if I mess up one more time, it's over. Like everyone's waiting for me to fail so they can replace me with someone who actually knows what they're doing. Can I tell you something? Clint said. Everyone in this production, from the producers to the guy who brings coffee, knew when we cast you that you'd never acted before. Nobody expected you to show up on set like Marlon Brando. You know why we cast you. He shook his head. Because you're real. When you read at the audition, you weren't performing. You were just being. That's what this character needs. Tao isn't a trained actor performing vulnerability. He's a scared kid trying to be brave. You don't need to act that. You already are that. But I can't even remember my lines, B said miserably. Because you're trying too hard. Your brain is so busy worrying about failing that it can't focus on succeeding. Here's what's going to happen. We're not shooting that scene today. B's head jerked up. But we have to. We're already behind schedule because of me. Forget the schedule. The schedule serves the film. The film doesn't serve the schedule. If I force you to do that scene right now, you'll get through it out of pure terror, and it'll be the worst take of the day. Then every time you see this movie, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember the panic and the shame, and you'll never want to act again. I'm not doing that to you. Clint stood up, offered B a hand. B took it, let himself be pulled to his feet. Here's what we're actually going to do, Clint said. You're going home. Not to study lines. Not to practice. You're going home to sleep. Eat a good meal. Watch TV. Do something that has nothing to do with this movie. Tomorrow morning, we're shooting a different scene. An easier one. A scene where you just walk into frame and say 2 lines. We're going to rebuild your confidence, one small win at a time. But what about this scene? We'll come back to it. Maybe in a week. Maybe 2. When you're ready. And if I'm never ready? Clint looked at him for a long moment. Then we'll cut it from the movie. Gran Torino will still work without this exact scene. But I don't think we'll have to do that. I think you'll be ready. I think in 2 weeks you'll nail it in one take. B's eyes filled with tears again. Why are you being so nice to me? You could just fire me. Replace me with someone better. Better, Clint repeated. Kid, there's 100,000 trained actors in Los Angeles who could deliver these lines perfectly on the first take. But they couldn't be Tao. They'd be performing Tao. You are Tao. There's a difference. He put a hand on B's shoulder. Also, I've been on 1,000 sets of my life. I've worked with terrified actors, drunk actors, unprepared actors, lazy actors. You know what you are. You're an anxious actor who cares so much about doing good work that your body is short-circuiting from the pressure. That's not a flaw. That's proof you're taking this seriously. Clint walked toward the door, then turned back. One more thing. What happened today doesn't leave this room. The crew out there, they're professionals. Nobody's going to gossip. Nobody's going to mock you. Tomorrow when you come back, everyone will act like today never happened. That's how my sets work. We support each other, and we protect each other. You're not going through this alone. He nodded, wiping his eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know how to. Go home, Clint said gently. Sleep. We'll see you tomorrow. What happened over the next 2 weeks became one of the quietest, most remarkable examples of directorial leadership in Hollywood history. But nobody talked about it publicly until years later. Clint restructured the entire shooting schedule around B. Instead of pushing through chronologically, he rearranged scenes so B could start with smaller, easier moments. A wordless scene walking through his yard. A simple exchange with his sister. Moments that required presence, but not emotional heavy lifting. After each successful take, Clint would say the same thing. That's good. That's really good. You see, you can do this. He started sleeping better. Started eating better. The panic attacks stopped. His confidence rebuilt slowly, like a muscle recovering after injury. But Clint did something else, something nobody outside the core crew knew about. He instituted a new rule on set: no visible stress. If an actor was struggling, they'd take a break. If someone needed to walk away for 5 minutes, they walked away. If tension was building, they'd shut down early rather than push through. Fear is contagious, Clint told his AD. But so is calm. I want the set to feel safe. For everyone. He also started a quiet tradition. Every morning before shooting, Clint would find B, usually standing off to the side looking nervous, and he'd say the same thing. You ready to do good work today? And B would nod, and Clint would nod back, and that was it. No speeches. No pep talks. Just a reminder. You're here to do good work. Not perfect work. Good work. 2 weeks later, they came back to the confession scene. The scene that had broken B on take 20. The scene that everyone had quietly written off as, we'll figure it out in editing. The crew assembled. The lights came on. B took his mark. You could see the nervousness in his face, but it was different now. Not the drowning panic of before. Just normal actor nerves. Clint called action. B delivered the entire scene in one take. Perfect. Every word right. Every emotion true. When he finished, There was a beat of silence. Then the script supervisor whispered to Clint, "That's the one." "Cut," Clint said quietly. Then louder, "Print that." Moving on. The crew started resetting for the next scene. B stood there, slightly dazed, like he couldn't quite believe it had happened. Clint walked over. "See," Clint said. "I told you. 2 weeks, 1 take." B's eyes welled up. "I don't know how you knew." "Because I've been you," Clint said simply. "And someone was patient with me. Now you be patient with the next person who needs it." Gran Torino was released in December 2008. It became one of Clint's most successful films, both critically and commercially. It grossed over $270 million worldwide against a $33 million budget. It's now considered one of his finest works, a meditation on redemption, prejudice, and unexpected friendship. Vang's performance was praised by critics. Many noted his natural, unforced vulnerability. The confession scene, the one he couldn't get through for 20 takes, became one of the film's emotional high points. In reviews and articles, nobody mentioned the panic attack. Nobody mentioned a restructured schedule. Nobody mentioned Clint sitting on the floor talking a terrified teenager through his first experience with anxiety. But B never forgot. In 2015, 7 years after Gran Torino, B was speaking at a college about his experience in film. A student asked him what it was like working with Clint Eastwood. B thought for a long moment, then said, "I had a moment on that film where I completely fell apart. I couldn't do the job. I froze in front of everyone. My career should have ended that day. I was convinced it would." The room was silent. But Clint didn't fire me. He didn't shame me. He didn't push me through it. He stopped everything, sat down with me, and told me something I needed to hear. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to struggle. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. He restructured 2 weeks of shooting, a multimillion-dollar production, to help a 19-year-old kid who'd never acted before get his confidence back. He didn't have to do that. He could have easily replaced me. But he chose to invest in me instead. That scene I struggled with, the confession scene, I ended up doing it in 1 take. 1 take after he gave me time to heal. That's not just good directing. That's understanding that humans aren't machines. That fear is real, and patience is power. A student raised their hand. "Did you ever thank him?" "Every day of my life," he said quietly. "Every time I help someone who's struggling. Every time I choose patience over pressure. Every time I remember that the person in front of me is doing their best, even if their best doesn't look like success right now. That's how I thank him, by passing it forward." The story spread slowly through film schools and acting communities. It became an example taught in leadership courses. Not the dramatic Hollywood version, where the director gives a rousing speech and the actor suddenly nails it, but the real version, the one where healing takes time, where safety matters more than schedule, where a leader's most important decision is sometimes just sitting on the floor next to someone who's falling apart and saying, "I've been there too." Clint never spoke about it publicly. In interviews about Gran Torino, he'd say B was a natural and exactly right for the role. If pressed about the production, he'd say, "We took our time, made sure everyone was comfortable. That's how you get good performances." But the crew members who were there tell a more complete story. They talk about how Clint restructured the schedule, how he checked in with B every morning, how he made it clear that mental health wasn't weakness. It was something you addressed directly and without shame. They talk about how the set felt different after that day, how other actors and crew members started being more open about their own struggles, how someone admitted they were dealing with depression and needed to adjust their hours, how a grip talked about his PTSD from military service, how the set became a place where vulnerability wasn't punished, it was protected. That's Clint's real legacy on that film, the cinematographer said years later. Not just the movie itself, but the way he made space for people to be human. In Hollywood, showing weakness can end your career. On Clint's set, showing weakness just meant you needed support. That's revolutionary. Vang continued acting for several years after Gran Torino. He appeared in a few more films and television shows. But eventually, He transitioned away from performing and into advocacy work, focusing on mental health awareness in Asian American communities and in the entertainment industry. In 2018, he wrote an article for a major publication about anxiety and panic disorders among young actors. The opening paragraph read, "I was 19 years old, standing in front of a camera for the 20th time, and I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't know the lines, not because I wasn't prepared, but because my brain had decided that this moment, this one scene in this one film, was a life or death situation, and the only way to save me was to shut everything down. That was my introduction to panic disorder, and it was also my introduction to what real leadership looks like." The article went viral. Thousands of young actors shared their own stories of panic, anxiety, imposter syndrome. The comments section became a support group. People who'd struggled in silence for years suddenly realized they weren't alone. And at the center of every conversation was the same lesson, the lesson Clint had taught on that Detroit set in 2008. That fear doesn't make you unworthy. That struggling doesn't make you weak. That asking for help isn't failure, it's courage. Today, mental health protocols on film sets are more common. Counselors available for cast and crew. Schedules that allow for mental health days. A growing understanding that the pressure of performance can be genuinely traumatic, and that protecting people's psychological well-being isn't soft, it's smart. Much of that change can be traced back to moments like the one on Gran Torino. Moments when a leader chose patience over profit. When someone with power used it to protect rather than punish. Clint Eastwood has directed nearly 40 films. He's known for efficiency, for getting what he needs quickly, for respecting budgets and schedules. But on that July day in 2008, he proved that efficiency means nothing if it destroys the people doing the work. He sat on a floor next to a terrified teenager and said, "I've been there too." He shut down production for 2 weeks to let someone heal. He chose a person over a schedule. And in doing so, he didn't just save Vang's performance. He saved his dignity, his confidence, possibly his entire relationship with acting. That's not in the movie. That's not in the credits. That's not part of the legend of Clint Eastwood, the hard-ass director who gets it right in one take. But maybe it should be. Because there are two kinds of strength. The kind that pushes through no matter what, and the kind that recognizes when pushing through will break something that can't be easily fixed. Clint chose the second kind. He chose to see a panic attack not as a production problem, but as a human being in crisis. And he responded with the one thing that could actually help: compassion. 20 takes. That's how long it took for Vang to break. But it only took one sentence for Clint to start putting him back together. "I've had them too." 3 words that said, "You're not alone. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're just human." And sometimes, that's the only thing someone needs to hear to find their way back. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who's struggling, someone who thinks their anxiety makes them unworthy, someone who believes that showing vulnerability is weakness. Tell them about the day Clint Eastwood sat on a floor and admitted he'd been scared too. Tell them that strength isn't pretending you're never afraid. Strength is choosing compassion when someone else is. Have you ever had a panic attack? Have you ever watched someone struggle and didn't know how to help? Share your story in the comments. Let's continue the conversation that Clint started on that Detroit set 15 years ago. Because this isn't just about Hollywood. It's about every workplace, every school, every place where pressure exists and people are expected to perform. It's about remembering that the person in front of you, no matter how much they're struggling, is doing their best. And sometimes, the best thing you can do is sit down next to them and say, "I've been there too." That's the story they don't tell about Gran Torino. But maybe it's the most important one.